The following is a fourth-hand production.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Good Old Sad Times. It's good to have you here. For those of you who have never listened to the show, just to let you know, let me give you a little brief summary. We're all struggling through life one way or another. We're all a little bit sad from time to time, or all the time, or, somewhere in the middle. And it's my belief that people don't really talk about that too much. And it's not my belief. That's my observation of objective reality. And people don't talk about it too much. And I think there can be a lot gained by people telling their stories about how they acted when they were sad, or traumatic events that have happened in their life and how they've dealt with it, and how their family has dealt with it. And it can hopefully make all of us feel a little bit less alone. So that's kind of the goal of Sad Times. For those of you who have never listened, I encourage you to support our sponsors, the first being the existential gaping maw that is life. And the second, of course, is fuck cigarettes. Fuck cigarettes are the best cigarettes. And to be clear, I'm not saying fuck, cigarettes. I'm saying fuck cigarettes. They look like Marlboros, but they say fuck on them. So go out. Go to your local, CVS doesn't sell cigarettes anymore. Go to your local Walgreens or a gas station and get yourself a pack of fuck. Just say, I'm here for the fuck. All right. So anyway, that's Sad Times. Wanted to bring you in today. I have a friend of mine who I just met last summer. His name is Bob LeGere. Hey, Bob.
How are you?
I'm all right, man. How are you?
I'm well. Before we get started, are fuck cigarettes actually really good?
They're great. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Because as, someone who quit smoking, the occasional one
too. Yeah.
just makes me say, fuck, it's
yeah.
good.
I quit smoking almost 16 years ago when you were -2. And I still dream that I smoke, but I have never had a, quote, occasional cigarette.
Well, that's good.
One day I'd like to. Well, maybe if I make it to 80 like Leonard Cohen, I'll just start fucking smoking again.
There you go.
See, that worked out. He's still alive, right? Okay. So Bob, I love to tell the story about Bob and I. I met Bob we worked at a company together briefly, and there was this buddy system that they had. And at the end of our orientation week, Bob was the person who kind of took us all and got us coffee. And it was like, we're going to introduce you to your buddies here at work. And it was really friendly. And he had a metal shirt on. And I was like, I want to like metal I like metal, but I want to know more about metal than I do. And every once in a while, Bob, I'd see him and we'd kind of nod to each other and had a metal shirt. Well, one day he was coming into work when I was going to pee because I'm old. And he had a T-shirt on. And I said, oh, man, that shirt. And Bob, it's as if he was beleaguered. It's like, oh, I got to explain this again. He's like, yeah, it's a band. They're called Ween. And I'm like, no. I fucking know who Ween is, man. I love Ween. And then we became good buddies after that.
Ween's about as metal as it gets.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, all the Mastodon shirts shrunk, and now the lovely Taylor Smith wears them as nightgowns. Because
awesome.
Shirts that don't fit me are still a nightgown on a normal sized person.
Yeah, you're a tall man. So Bob, you're a big music fan.
Mm-hmm.
You're from. We've met in Chicago. We're outside of Chicago right now in Berwyn. You're from the Chicago area?
I am. Yeah. I was born at LaGrange Hospital, where my mother has worked for like 30 years now.
What does she do there?
She's a nurse. She works in an operating room. There was like a very small stint where
Pardon the pun.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But she went and worked for like a smaller office that was like opening up, and it ended up like not panning out. So she literally just went back to LaGrange. And so she's worked there forever. But yeah, I was born there. I spent, the first, like my very early childhood in the Hillside, Berkeley area. That's where my mother's family's from. And my dad works in Hillside right now. He works for the Village of Hillside, like Public Works Department.
Oh, okay.
But but we've lived in Elmhurst, which is just over the bridge that crosses over 290 from Hillside and Berkeley. And I went to high school there. Had kind of, the same core group of like my guy friends that I've gone to some of them elementary school with. And then went to DePaul University for college. But I've been in Chicago my whole life.
I have to ask you, because I've been here 12 years, so 11, about the same amount of time as you. Are you tired of Chicago?
Never. I was just thinking about this today because I think as we get into this, I'm essentially just like, it's a funny thing because I'm definitely a city kid or city guy at this point. City man.
Yeah.
That's my Superman name.
City man? You don't scale tall buildings, you just build tall buildings.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
With well-paid union labor.
Hey, good man.
Yeah,
there
no scabs, no rats. Anyways, so, I think I could always see myself living in like New York because also being a city like hippie, if you will. I love the outdoors. I love hiking. And, kind of the problem with I know I don't want to go live like in some mountain town because I need the energy of like other humans. But New York is not as good as Chicago in my opinion, but it's definitely a place I could live. And then I'd be near, Maine and Vermont and all those places that I also love that I've been to my whole life. And
did your family go to New England a lot, or is that
no? So
thing?
Kind of going back to my mother and her family, her oldest sister moved out to Burlington, Vermont to work at IBM.
Did you marry John Fishman? What?
No, my mom did. No.
Oh,
I'm kidding.
Wow, you're John. Yeah.
Bob Fishman.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Bob Fishman. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're good. And so my mom went out there so this is her oldest sister that's like 9 years older than her. So big role model in her life growing up. And she went out there to do a nursing residency. But my mom, unfortunately, does not love the outdoors. So Burlington was not the spot for her, but we would always go visit there. And, I think as a kid, I probably would have preferred to be watching TV or playing video games rather than being outside. But as I've grown up, I love being outside. And that's kind of, you start to forget the love you have for Chicago when you can't go outside anymore, like in the winter.
I think that's pretty well said. And I think another thing for Chicago is that we live on the side of this giant fucking lake that's like an ocean. And this place in summer there's no place better.
It's the best.
Than fucking Chicago in the summer. So I think that's well said. And yeah, there is the opportunity. I'm from Illinois as well. There are opportunities around to get outside, but you're not going to have as scenic views unless you go down to Southern Illinois University of Carbondale, who are now accepting students. Anybody who wants to go. But down there, I mean, Giant City Park and all sorts of stuff. Beautiful area. But so.
I mean, have you been to Michigan? Michigan is
I have been. Michigan's beautiful. Upper Michigan. Ooh.
I mean, the further up you go, the better it gets. And fun fact, which I unfortunately haven't fact checked, so take me, at my word on this. Supposedly it has more shoreline than California, because if you factor in the UP and the entire state,
well, yeah, because
the whole state's a shore.
On. Yeah, that's one fucked up mitten.
Yeah.
I've been to the UP once, and I really liked it, and I'd like to go back. But so you grew up in Chicago. Talking about your parents, did you have any siblings?
Well, my sister.
Your sister.
Which is why we're here.
Yes. And you older, younger?
Younger, 9 years younger than me.
Just like your mom and her sister.
Exactly. Well, she had two in between there too. So.
Oh, okay. Is your mom the youngest?
Yeah, both my parents are the youngest. My mom is one of 4, and my dad is one of 5.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Classic, 60s, 70s, suburban white families. Polish, Italian,
Oh, Polish.
Irish,
Well,
Chicago
Yeah.
people. Yeah.
So,
Chicago.
you, being in Chicago, Polish, Irish, Italian, like, do you have a large family around here?
Yeah. And that's, really quickly, just to take a second and give them a shout out is, while we get into this, obviously terrible thing that's happened, I just have to give a shout out to my grandparents, my mom, my dad, my aunts and uncles, my cousins. Like, without them, things would have, my journey to get to this point would have been way worse and way different. And I can only imagine how bad it must be for someone to go through this and not have like that family net, and that channel of support. Even out, like, even without all the friends, and members of the community that have helped us, like, our family is just insane. And I'm so lucky, to have them all in this area. But yeah, like, the only people that have moved outside of the Chicagoland area are, like I mentioned, my mom's oldest sister and her family. They now live in Idaho, and then, the kids are grown up, so they live throughout the West. And then my dad's brother and his sister, I'm sorry, his wife, they live
Same
thing. in Arizona.
Okay. Well, and I just have to say, let's just talk about, what we're talking about. Obviously a very traumatic event, and a really lovely way to call out your family, because in the end, what else is there besides maybe friends, right? So, what are you referring to?
In what way? Like,
when you say when this happened and that.
Oh, yeah, of course. So in August of 2015, my sister, who was 13 at the time, I was 22, she passed away after being in a coma from suffering from anaphylactic reaction, or anaphylaxis is the technical term. That's what happens when you ingest something that you're allergic to, which unfortunately, and we could obviously get into the issues of agriculture and things that are being put in our food that we don't know about. But unfortunately, she had an unknown allergy to something she consumed that day. And that was the cause of it.
Wow. Jesus. Okay. I obviously knew what we were going to talk about. My eyes got big because, I guess I was lazy and hadn't done the math. I didn't realize it was that recent, right? And I remember exactly where I was, in August 2015. So, such a fresh thing. So you're 9 years older than her. So I'm the youngest of two, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what it's like to have a younger sibling. Although I'm still, my parents have been divorced. This year will be 30 years, but maybe I'll have a younger sibling, but we'll see. What was that like, being that much older? Because my sister and I are 3.5 years apart. Being 9 years older, like, what was that, weird or?
Yeah, it was a little weird. We had, we had our moments. Like, I was thinking about like great memories I've had with my sister. One of them that comes to mind was, I think I was like a freshman in high school, and we went to Disney World.
Yeah.
Like, what does a 15-year-old do in Disney World? But it was actually very fun. And honestly, it was...
Complain?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, where's like the teen nightclub that I can go to or something?
Teen nightclub.
But yeah, like, that was one of the first times where I kind of learned that, everything doesn't have to be about you. That's a very important lesson to learn as a young man. And meaning that, like, just seeing the happiness that my sister, who was, I'm going to do terrible math here, 5, 6, get to experience, was the vacation. That was enough for me. And like, we had these things where we would bond, but that's also to say that, when you look at the grand scheme of things and you realize how close people are with their siblings that are a year, 2 year, 3 years apart, like, they grow up in the same, they know the same pop culture. They grow up in the same, I guess, era, because we really were like an era apart. Like what was cool when I was, her age wasn't cool.
What year was your sister born?
2002.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I mean, just first thing off my mind, that's post 9/11, right?
Yeah.
So you're born in a totally different time.
Yeah. And really quick shout out, before, popular culture and media influence ruined her taste in music, her favorite Bob Dylan song was Who Killed Davy Moore. I had to tell you that.
Your sister's favorite
She
Bob
was like
Dylan
6
song?
years old singing that around the house. She was heady, dude.
Dude, why and what the reason for? That is amazing. Wow.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
so cool. Well,
that's my dad. Yeah.
Your dad's a big Dylan fan, but so he would play that, and your sister was just walking around the house at 6. She'd just been to Disney World, and so she's not singing "It's a Small World." She's singing "Who Killed Davy Moore."
Yeah.
So she had a social conscious
and
or
like
a boxing fan.
She saw, or I don't know if she even saw the movie, but like she might have heard the soundtrack to like Walk the Line. She loved Johnny Cash too.
That's so awesome.
But then it was One Direction backwards from there, pun intended.
Yeah. Okay. I see. So being 9 years older than her, other than, which was really lovely stated about going to Disney World and seeing her being so happy around all those things and realizing, oh, it's not really about me. And you're right. That has to happen, or you become president and a monster. So,
the greatest president.
Did you? But you had to at 15. If you're not at Disney World, did you feel like, geez, you're a baby or that type of thing? Like,
yeah, totally,
Yeah.
and like, it was fine. But she's a kid, so she's a little kid. Me and my friends are like in my basement in high school, like probably trying to steal my parents' alcohol and like, I don't know, like find the porn channel that's gonna like break through on accident or something. I don't know. What do 15-year-old guys do when they hang out?
No, that's exactly it.
And like, she would just come down and like want attention. So she would come down and start like screaming and like throwing things at us and stuff and just being a kid. And it's like, it's those moments when you look back and you're like, oh, what I would give to have that again, like, or anything for that matter. But like in the moment, you're like, oh, like, why is my oh, she's just always around, like she's this little brat, blah 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 blah.
What was her name?
Annie.
So would you say, Annie, get out of here?
Yeah, well, I always called her Ange, which was kind of
I love
that was kind of a family thing, I guess, because my dad's brother, his wife's name was Annie, and that was always the thing that we always called her Ange.
Whole family, the whole immediate family. At least.
Yeah. And
Okay.
so I don't think that many people in my family called Annie Ange besides like me and like my parents, though.
Okay. So and I'm also really fascinated by immediate families and the whole culture you build up and spin up around yourself, and the whole sense of humor.
Mm-hmm.
Like my sister, my mom, and I, my parents got divorced when I was 8. My sister, my mom, and I, we have our own world of sense of humor, and it's like the most comfortable place in the world. So to hear that even something like a name, right, with the immediate family is comforting. So that was when you're 15. I don't know about you. From 15 to about 37, I was a real prick.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I mean, if you couldn't tell already by my attitude.
Yeah, I'm real fucking tired of it. Can we stop? Am I? Nope, not allowed to stop. Okay. Did you kind of grew out of that? We're in the basement trying to fucking get some alcohol, look at the porn. You go to school at DePaul, as you said, here in Chicago.
Yeah.
Did your relationship change as she got older?
Yeah, absolutely. And you grow up and irony becomes a real thing because, towards the end of her life, she entered that not, she unfortunately never made it to high school, but even when you're 12, 13, she was, if it was the summer, she was gone. Like she was riding her bike around town with her friends. And I'm also grateful that this is going back to the age gap thing. I'm really grateful that, we weren't a couple years apart, because I would hate to see my sister getting into the same kind of trouble that I was getting into.
Do you feel like expanding on that, or should we move on?
Well, sure, but like I was the firstborn, so I always joke like it's my job to like break my parents in. And I would say I went pretty far in that direction, meaning like that, I know that it's hard for them because like, your firstborn's your firstborn, and I think there's all kinds of like psychology related to how you feel, how you feel about your firstborn, no matter what you might say to other people.
I've thought about that a lot. Like I just can't imagine the overwhelming all of it, right?
Yeah. Well, and so, and that's another thing people never point out is like, especially your parents' generation, my parents' generation, like, those people were having kids like right now. Like I can't raise a kid right now.
Right.
And they're still kids.
Yeah.
Like raising a baby.
Yeah. I was 6 when my dad was at this age.
Yeah.
I've still got more hair in them.
But
yeah, because you got married, you had kids.
Yeah.
And now it's a different thing.
Yeah. And so I really appreciate that. I feel like she got to live her own life, being that far apart from me in terms of age. Like, like her and her friends, and, you could talk about, gender and things of that nature, I guess. But, her and her friends were just doing very different things than me and my friends when we were in middle school. Like, dude, 13, we want to talk about like guys in high school. Let's talk about guys in middle school. I'll like cross the street if I see 13-year-old boys for sure. Like they are dealing with so much, and there's so much weird testosterone that they don't understand yet, that all they want to do is like break shit, and like they want to get into like serious trouble, and like just like I don't know.
Therein is why Limp Bizkit happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
But when I was in middle school, I was just all about Scholastic Bowl, which is why we're here. Anyway, okay, so you're 21, 22, you're finishing up, coming to the end of your time at DePaul in school.
Yeah.
She's 12, 13. You had mentioned much earlier, that your mom's sister, 9 years older, moved out to Burlington, and you used the word role model.
Yeah.
Words. Do you feel like you were a role model for Annie?
Yeah, I mean, God, you got to hope to think so, right? And yeah, I think I was in a lot of ways. It's not like, it's not like I brought any of the negative stuff that I was doing home with me in that sense. And like, I don't think she ever, because that's another thing too, like towards the end of my college career, which is like, inherently when you're probably like partying the most and staying out late and coming home at 4 in the morning. And, but like, yeah, if, I don't think she saw any of that, which was good. And so obviously, to pat myself on the back, I think I have some good qualities as well. And I think that's definitely what she picked up on. Like she was definitely like me in the sense that she had a sense of humor. Mm-hmm. She was definitely like me in the sense that she's a leader. She would have, and I'm the same way. I try to be a good friend, to people that I consider friends. And she was absolutely the same. Like if there was one thing any of her friends would have said about her, it was like very inclusive. Like she hated the whole, like, girls growing up, like clique thing, like where you have to have a best friend or two best friends. And then anyone outside of that is like outside of the group, quote unquote. She was always inclusive and always wanting to go do things with bigger groups of people and make sure that no one felt left out. And that's like the important shit. And that's the kind of stuff that I hoped that I instilled in her.
Wow. Yeah. That, I think that's well said. So she's, 12, 13, and then, you're off at college.
Well, I was off at college.
Yep.
like 20. I turned 21 in my Wicker Park apartment. Shout out to my buddies Barnes and Cronin. That was a wild place.
Yeah, I lived with Barnes and Noble, but
but yeah, like, so I turned 20 there. So and I remember
21.
Turned 21 there.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And then I remember the reason I moved out was to take a road trip. I was in college, and I was like, well, I can't do both. So very, again, being a well-showered hippie.
What a great phrase. Anyway,
yeah. So being a hippie that likes to shower, I was like, hey guys, can we find someone to take my room? Because I'm going to just go drive around for like a month and do this thing. It was in the summer. And so I was actually back home, and so I'm grateful for that time again, because moving back home, and now we're nearing, like, you know, obviously we didn't know this, but nearing the last, like, probably year of her life, we would have lots of nice time together. I would give her rides to go meet up with her friends if I was around. And, you know, mind you, this isn't like early college where you have to go out every night, so I'm kind of over that. And, you know, we would have time just alone in the house, like, you know, after school, if I didn't have class that day or I was done and our parents were both at work.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, that's the sad part, is that, you know, we were just getting to that age. And I've talked to a lot of people who have a big age gap between them and their siblings. And it's like, yeah, like once everyone grows up, like that's when the real connection starts to happen for siblings of that nature. And it's not like, it's not negative. Like, you know, she had to go be a kid. And you know, the last thing I was going to do was be mad if she wanted to go hang out with her friends rather than hang out with her 22-year-old brother that she has nothing in common with right now.
The days of her coming into the basement and being like, are over. She wants to be with her friends.
No, yeah. Now I'm coming into the basement.
Yeah, now you're like, hey, I'm not going to throw anything because I might hurt myself, but...
let's hang out.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay, so you were at home and you got some good time with her around the time you went on the road trip. And then, so once you're back from the road trip, are you in... Where do you move back to Chicago?
No, yeah. So that's what I'm saying. So I turned 21 in that apartment, and then that was in January. So then that following summer, so it would have been the summer of 2014 is when I went on that road trip and moved out. And then I just moved back into my parents' house. So that's the timeline.
I got it.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Okay, got it. So the fall of 2014, you're living at home.
Yeah, all the way. And then summer of 15 is when she was at her friend sleeping over, and this happened.
She was at a sleepover.
Yeah, so she was having, I don't know if you did this, it might be like a regional thing, but like me and my friends always did it growing up. Well, pretty much until high school. That's when it kind of becomes lame, but like you'd have like a sleepover like at the end of summer going into your new year with your friends. And I always thought that was cool because I never told her that that's what we did, and it was never communicated, but her friends did that and we did that. And that was like a thing that I guess was not like generational.
And that's another thing that probably you could look back on and just when you were seeing it happen, you're like, oh, that's so cool. She's doing the same thing as me. I mean, to be honest with you, my my best friend and I stayed at his house through high school. Like that was the thing, was we spent the night at places and we would play fucking euchre, the greatest card game ever known to man, and then we'd play like old pro wrestling video games.
Yeah.
And we would just laugh all night. And it was just the fucking best thing.
Pop and junk food.
Right.
And like
and be like, we're gonna make it till we're gonna make it till 5 a.m. or 6 a.m.
Yeah, first person to fall asleep is like we're fucking with you.
Right. And then you draw on them.
And dip their hand in water and whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kid shit. Fun stuff. Right. Innocent, fun stuff.
So your sister's at a sleepover like this.
Yeah.
And then what happens?
So, obviously I wasn't there. I don't know. But apparently, this is another, this is hard for for all of us is that like she's not at home, right? You feel like if this were to happen at her own house, things could have maybe gone differently. And then there was the EpiPen thing that we'll get to, which again was something where it's like, man, this little detail, it could have changed the outcome of this. But she was at the sleepover, and I guess, like based on what her friends were telling us, she was like coughing really bad. So she texted or called my mom and said, I don't feel well. Can you come pick me up? And by the time my mom got there, she was like unconscious. And so obviously 911, I believe, had been called before even my mother showed up.
Just to ask, how far was the distance between where your mom was coming from to this house?
This is like less than a mile. So this is
Jesus.
like if we're looking at a map of Elmhurst. Elmhurst is from north to south very long. So it goes all the way from like Roosevelt Road essentially. All the way up to, well, this is a bad comparison because Grand Avenue goes on an angle, but if you're from the west suburb, shout out 630, Bensonville is like the town next to Elmhurst, and that's on Grand Avenue. And Grand Avenue, by the time it's out there, is very far north. And anyways, I'm kind of trailing off, but but like you can get, this is like just over the train tracks in Elmhurst, so it's like less than a mile. So my mom, of course, like zips over there. By that time, the 911's called. And then that's the thing is the first responder is not always the ambulance or the fire truck or what you might need.
Police?
So like there's a call that goes out and there's an emergency happening here, get there. And whoever's closest goes. And that's the bad thing is like when someone's having a medical emergency, if it's not like CPR, like what can the police officer do? That's why, like people overdosing on heroin is a huge thing now. So now police officers carry Narcan.
Yep.
And, first of all, if you're doing heroin with your friends, you should have Narcan as well. Like if you're, not to like, but be fucking responsible. And like, you can go get it at Walgreens.
I think that was in the liner notes of the first Velvet Underground record.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But anyway, so like that's another initiative that like has been taken because where if someone's having that kind of emergency, like, you need that and there's no point to having it if the first responder is not going to have it. So that's been having epinephrine in the hands of everyone that would be a first responder. So police officers, firefighters, obviously EMTs. EMTs have it. But at that point, I don't think they knew what was necessarily happening yet. So they bring her to the hospital and then from, that night happens and then she's transferred to Lurie's Children's Hospital in Park Ridge, somewhere on the north side.
What, in the city of Chicago?
Or...
Because it
wasn't in the city of Chicago,
okay.
but it is like I think it's one. Is there more than one? I don't know.
I only know the one that used to be off of Fullerton, and is now down by like the water tower place.
Okay, yeah, I think there's like a branch of them. But anyway, she gets transferred there, and kind of what I was talking about yesterday when we were briefing on this thing was like you have this sister that's 9 years younger than you, right? So she's always a baby in your eyes, and you hear like mom come in your room because I was living at home again. And she's like, I got to go pick your sister up from the sleepover. Like something's wrong. And I'm like, oh, she's like, she had like a nightmare or something. Because even though she's 13 and that wouldn't be a reason why she comes home from a sleepover, in my head, she's my baby sister. So I'm like, oh, it's some, whatever. And then before like they get back home, my dad's like, oh, like they're going to the hospital, like something's wrong with Annie. And I'm like, oh, okay, like maybe she had like, I don't know, it could be anything.
Yeah.
And so also I assume going to the hospital means Annie got in my mom's car, they're driving to the emergency room and they're like sitting in a waiting room, right? It's not like your sister's unconscious in an ambulance going to the hospital and they're going to have to like try to revive her. Like that's what I didn't know. And that's what, like, to be fair, it's not like my parents were keeping that from me. Like, my dad didn't know that. And my mom was, like, really the only one who even knew. And she wasn't going to take the time to call me up and tell me that. She was, like, in the moment, like, dealing with that. And so that night I go to bed and I wake up in the morning and I'm like, oh, like what's going on? Like no one's home. And so I call my parents and they're like, yeah, we're at LeGere's Children's Hospital. Like your sister's not doing well. She's in a coma. And I'm like, Jesus. But then at that point, yeah. And then at that point, I'm like, well, yeah, but like a coma's because you're just trying to give yourself some fake optimism and stuff. And you're like, yeah, but like people go into comas all the time. Well, that's just like a long nap or something.
That's kind of what you thought. So they said, your sister's in a coma. So you transition from.
Or you know what? I also don't want to tell this the wrong way. I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, and I could be completely wrong on this. So mom, dad, sorry. I'm pretty sure they didn't even tell me that. I'm pretty sure they told me like, your sister's in the hospital. You need to get here because they didn't want to like scare me. So
what did you think when you hear that? You need to get here. That would terrify me.
Yeah, no, I mean, and deep down I was, and like that's the thing was like I remember like because I didn't say anything to anyone, so over the next couple days, like people were calling and texting me like, hey, what are you doing tonight? And I'm like, fuck, dude, I'm not doing anything. My sister's in a coma. And they're like, Jesus Christ, like I'm so sorry. And I'm like, don't like, yeah, I know, like it's fine. Like there's no right way to have this conversation.
Yeah, right. Right. Mm-hmm.
And so, but yeah, like, so, it definitely hits you when you go and you see your baby sister like hooked up to machines and there's like a social worker there kind of already briefing you on like what the possible outcomes are of this. And, first of all, let me preface this by saying like, it's so enlightening and nice that enough time has passed that I can talk about this and not get too emotional because shit, I would say even like last year I couldn't do this. So like I'm proud to be here and talking about this and be okay with it. Yeah. But yeah, so that happens and you call the whole family and like, my girlfriend at the time was obviously there all the time with us. And yeah, the next 9 days are just like, me doing everything I can. Like my parents didn't fucking leave. Like my parents were at the hospital for 9 days straight. I would bring them clothes. They would shower there. They never left her. I would go home to like, I would have to go home at night because we had dogs. And I also was just kind of like, and I think, my parents probably designed it this way where like, I think I was removed enough to give myself, like I mentioned to you, that kind of like false optimism. Because like if you go home every night, you can kind of, you
can disengage from
it. You can go home, you can eat some food, hopefully, you can have a drink and kind of be like, all right. And like, I mean, again, friends, man. Like I got some friends out there. And like every night, like friends would come over, sit with me, do whatever I wanted to do. And, it was never like, what's going on? Like, how is she? It was like, what do you want to talk about? Like, let's talk about fish or something.
Yeah. So some unshowered hippies then.
Yeah.
No, but that's amazing. The fact that they're like, no, we're not going to talk about that unless you want to.
Yeah, like of course it was always like, it was like, yeah, like, if that's what you want to talk about, because sometimes you do want to talk about that.
So I'm going to go ahead just for now. I'm going to put a little break in here, take a little break, and then we'll come back here on Sad Times with the great Bob LeGere, and we'll continue the story. So
awesome.
We'll see you on the other side.
Yeah.
Are you a fan of movies?
Or comics?
Or video games?
Or just anything else nerdy?
Well, you should check out the Zing This Podcast. And that's spelled
Zeng.
This. And we have nerdy topics from comic book reviews to in-depth analysis of iconic nerdy movies, as well as video game discussions. Mm-hmm. Where's some of the best places to find us, Allie?
Well, Podbean, of course.
You can also find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play.
Anywhere else you listen to your podcast. Yeah.
So check us out. Once again, that is Zing This.
All right, right, welcome back in to Sad Times here with Bob LeGere. Bob, how was your break?
It was really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, good pee.
Yeah, me too. Well, that's great. Okay, so when we left off, your sister had just kind of been admitted to the hospital, and you had been there a little bit, and I guess it's safe to say she was in a coma. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I guess before we continue, let me preface this, because we're going to be talking about the aftermath, which I think is the most important part.
Mm-hmm.
There's things that I'm going to say. So it's important to distinguish the difference between kind of my objective opinion on things versus my subjective experience. It's the only note that I'd like to make. And I think you and whoever is listening will start to see the difference.
My mom.
My mom's going to listen too.
Oh, they should be friends.
God, we are so big amongst the moms.
I know. We're huge. I'm huge with my mom.
Yeah.
She's a big fan of me. I'm like her second favorite person after my sister.
Yeah. My mom took me to Costco yesterday.
I've never been to a Costco.
Oh my God, you got to go. You should go with your mom. She'll probably buy you some treats.
Ooh.
Mom bought me so many chicken thighs.
Jesus.
Like a 24-pound pack because it's
All
Costco.
Right. Well, I guess you got the memo that this was supposed to be sad. Okay, so you thank you for the disclaimer.
Yeah.
So your sister is in the hospital, and you've been there. You've hung out with your friends. What I mean by hung out with your friends is you went home. You had to take care of the dogs. Your friends came over and took care of you. Kind of.
Yeah.
Take us from there.
Yeah. So I guess just kind of going through this. You said this at the beginning of the podcast, and I realized I kind of put my foot in my mouth. I don't have an objective opinion. I have a subjective opinion. So I have my my experience or viewpoint on the objective reality. That's what I was trying to say.
I gotcha.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. But anyways, so yeah, it's kind of just, every day is the same. So you're essentially, waking up, first thing I do is look for texts or calls from my parents, obviously hoping yeah, she's fine. She's up. We're good. And then obviously in the back of your mind, hoping that you're not getting the opposite of that.
Right.
And, anyone that's gone through this, which I hope is the smallest population possible, it just really sucks. And it could be anything. It doesn't need to be this specific example. Like if you've ever had a family member in the hospital, unconscious like that, and you're staring at numbers on a screen, and basically the doctor and the nurses come in and tell you, these are the numbers you want. And you're sitting there like you're at a fucking roulette game or something. You know what I mean? You're right. All right, get there.
Yeah.
And then it goes up one and you're like, okay, yeah, good. And then it goes down one and you're like, oh God.
Wow.
It's a bad thing because that's all you have. Obviously my mom has some more than that because she's in the medical field. And
right. That's right. Your mom's a nurse.
And that that really helped because I can, again, there's certain things that I'm so grateful for because I can only imagine the other people that are in this children's ICU with us that don't know shit about biology and don't have, my mom's friends that were doctors would come to the hospital and talk to her and ask to compare charts and go talk to whoever was in charge. And we had, and this is again, going back to the network, when my sister passed away, they shut down the LeGrange operating room. And everyone, including the president of the hospital, was at my sister's funeral. We had an amazing support system. But I guess, yeah, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. But anyways, yeah.
Sorry, I'm just I was speechless by that. But
yeah,
yes,
yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah. And so, every day at this hospital is just the same, like I just expressed. So, unfortunately, we have this day where there was a night, actually, and there was think it was me, my mom, my dad, my girlfriend at the time, and my grandpa, my mom's father.
Mm-hmm.
My mom's mother passed away quite a while back. I was in 8th grade, 7th grade or 8th grade.
Okay.
And there was a night where, I could never tell you what this was calculating. I think it might have been like the pressure in her head. And there was just a number on a board, and it was like, if it starts to get into those numbers, it's bad. And there was a night where it did. And I think I don't know if they they definitely had to take her and run some tests on her after that point to see like what the damage was.
Take her from the room.
Yeah.
Wheel
So,
her out. Okay.
I mean, I left before that point. So
Okay.
this was like right before I was going home. And I just remember being like, in a really bad place, obviously. And like from then on out, it was definitely more grim. And then there was like basically the day where, we kind of decided, we didn't decide. It was kind of communicated to us that, this is not something she's going to get out of. And I kind of talked to you about this yesterday, but I was definitely at that point, like kind of in denial. And
sorry, can I interrupt for a second?
Yeah.
Sorry. When you say communicated to you that this is something she's not going to get out of, what does that mean? Like a doctor came and said, "Hey, she's not going to get any better," or what does that mean?
Yeah, like so it was communicated, and again, because I wasn't in this, I refused to like hear that. Like I wasn't going to have a doctor come in and tell me that my sister was going to die. And I know that's like me just saying that is very heavy. But I wanted no part of that. I was going to kind of just like be by her side and whatever. I know it's like kind of immature to be that way, but I was just like, no, like this isn't going to happen. And,
so did you just, when the doctor said, "I'd like to talk to the family," we were like, "I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stay here with her."
Yes, exactly. And this was the whole family. This was my dad's brothers and sisters, my mom's brothers and sisters, all their
all at the
kids,
hospital.
aside from maybe a few that were like, at college and getting on a plane the next day to come home or something like that. So it was the vast majority of our family. And they were in like a big conference room with the doctors. And I don't know if they flat out were like, this is it. I remember hearing that, like, basically, my mom definitely pulled me aside and was like, "Hey, even if Annie, even if a miracle happened and she somehow came out of this, you need to know that like she would not be your sister anymore. Like she wouldn't have her personality. She would be like in a chair like a zombie." And that was like the best case scenario.
How did you react when you heard that?
That's something that you almost, it's like you don't cry, you don't get mad, you don't like you're like numb. It's
I don't know what to.
It's like out of body.
Yeah.
And so the day came and I went home. I was like, I'm not going to like be around here for this. And I know that that's something my parents had to do. That's, that's their daughter. But I was like, I can't let that be like the last image. You know what I mean? So I'm grateful that I left when I did because my sister was just fine. She was laying in a bed. And then my parents came home and she was gone. And, then the closure and the healing begins, which is kind of the most important part. And so, like I said, I mean,
Can I ask how long was the time frame from when you left? You're like, I'm going to go home, whatever. And then when your parents came home after your sister
I think
passed
it
away?
was, if I can't remember if I left at night and they came home the next day or if it was just later that day.
Gotcha.
But I remember I went home with the notion of like, my sister's not coming home with them. And, to kind of put things, hopefully, like to have a little bit of a positive spin, like the services and everything were something out of like, that's when you find out like just how many lives someone touches. Like everyone in town was there. And this isn't like some like, this is a 50,000 person town. There was you had to wait like 3 hours to get into her wake.
Really?
Yeah, like I said, like my mom's department at the hospital was closed. Like they didn't schedule any surgeries. Mind you, she doesn't work like an ER. There weren't like people waiting to be.
Right. Yeah. Right. There were people who could wait.
Yeah.
Hours.
These are scheduled like shoulder surgeries and stuff like that. So everything was fine. But like, yeah, like nothing but the most respect from everyone. And meanwhile, like during this whole period of time where she's in the hospital, there's candlelight vigils in our town. There's, prayer services at churches, and people are, bringing over food to our houses and flowers. And like, my God, the flowers like just filled our whole house.
And were they bringing like, excuse me, food, casseroles, things
yeah,
like that?
Everything, like all that stuff.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And were you guys a church? Did you have a church congregation that you were a part of?
Yeah, technically.
Okay.
I don't go to that.
Well, me.
But
either.
I am a confirmed Catholic. Yes.
Well, I'm sorry.
Yeah, not my choice.
Actually, by the way, hold on. Let me look at the time. My nephew is about to be a confirmed Catholic.
Dude,
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Talk about sad times. Anyway, go ahead.
But yeah, so, and that, that's a good point in terms of the, how we cope. So me, my mom, and my dad, I think all coped in very different ways. And, my dad being very strong in his faith, that's kind of the route he went.
Okay, so he's a very strong Catholic, yes. Catholic,
yeah,
okay.
And I think, to his credit, like that's what I mean is we say these kind of like little jokes.
Yeah, I'm joking.
Yeah. No, and that's okay. And I feel the same exact way as you, where I knew from a very early age that like, and I don't know, things could change, but like I was like, I do not subscribe to that. But he does. And
well, when you're 38, you're going to come out with an album called Slow Train Coming. And no, sorry, go ahead. So he does. And he always has. Does he go to mass every week?
Yeah, he goes to mass. Me and my girlfriend got him like a book for Christmas that has like a little, passage in it for each day. You can like take notes on it and stuff like that.
Oh, wow.
And he's like, he's not, like I said, he's a very private guy. So he's not going to go out there and be like, you need to like follow he's not like one of those people.
Mm-hmm.
Thank God. Pun intended.
Yeah. Amen.
But yeah, like I truly do believe that works for him. And I truly believe that it's given him a lot of peace. And I think, God, among the unhealthy ways that you can deal with something like this, that's got to be one of the best.
That's got to be one of the healthiest, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You have that outlet. And
yeah,
I mean, look at, if I may, I make light of all this shit. But I'm somebody who...
That's the only way you can do it, man.
Yeah, well, that's also true.
Yeah.
Fortunately, never had to deal with this, but, I have my own comeuppance and frustration with religion, but that doesn't mean that it's wrong for everybody else. It's just wrong for me.
Yeah, well, and at that time, like going through that was when I was angriest about that kind of stuff, too. You just have...
angry at God? If there is a God, like why?
Yeah, well, that was my question, right? My ultimate question is like, how can there be a God if this kind of stuff happens? And even the strongest, but that's the thing. That has nothing to do with if you talk to a Christian. That's not what the faith is about. You're not asking why do bad things happen. The belief is that these things happen for whatever reason. And, dealing with it is kind of the human suffering that, like, I can get behind that part. I can get behind the fact that life is kind of suffering, like, but really...
Well, don't get Buddhist on me.
Well, I actually did get into Buddhism for a while, too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I give everything away.
Well, no, it's fine. And I totally understand that. Basically, what it comes down to me, and this is... I think there's a lot of good stuff in every single scripture of every religion. And I think that there's things in there that every decent human being should absolutely follow. For me, the real thing is that I don't think I can't get behind, I can't put my faith into an idea that there's something beyond what we're doing right now in this existence that's more real than this. Sorry to get
No, that's just the nicest thing anybody's ever said about my podcast. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's, we try to be real here.
Yeah.
On Sad Times. But no, I'm the same way. The way that I say it is not as eloquent as that. I say when the brain dies, I don't understand how there can be life.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is,
That's me, though.
Yeah, well, and these are the kind of things you have to think about when something like this happens, is because I am very spiritual, but, I kind of have this weird, again, I'm sorry that I'm such a hippie, but I have this weird kind of feeling that, the whole, putting people in the ground is all part of kind of this, environmental, I feel, I absolutely believe that you could feel that I felt my sister in the wind, or that a tree reminds me of her, or that, anything like that, where it's I truly believe that the soul stays on this planet and it kind of almost becomes part of it. And that's why look at the veins in your arm and the veins on a leaf.
Same thing.
All these are signs that I think that we are much closer with the earth and the environment than a lot of people unfortunately think.
Yeah, well, they don't. Yeah, right. Are you saying there's something wrong with my veins?
No, I'm saying there's something wrong with the way that Donald Trump protects your veins.
Well, that's enough.
Or the lack thereof protection.
What? Can we turn this off? That's upsetting. That's upsetting to me. It's upsetting to... I'm just kidding. Okay. All joking aside, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
And I'm not an unwashed hippie or a washed hippie. I'm just a washed failure. So, but I agree with that. I think it's all as one, the circle of life, whatever you want to call it. The Tom Waits song, "Dirt in the Ground." We're all just going to be, etc. So
there's a Fish song called "Dirt." That's also lovely. Kind of a similar vibe.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Is that right? What record is that on? Or
Farmhouse.
Is that on Farmhouse? Because I love the song Farmhouse.
Farmhouse instinctively makes me have to pee.
Do we need to take another break?
No. Just don't play it.
Okay. This is okay. So now you've talked about how your dad dealt with it. How did you deal with it?
Well, we'll get to that. I want to talk about my mom because she.
Okay.
And you know what? This is just my opinion, but a mother and their child is.
I have no concept.
Exactly, and that's the thing is, I don't want this to turn into an opinion on what gender is and man versus woman or anything like that. But no one's taking this harder than my mother. Period.
You're exactly
even
right.
Me, even my dad, no one. And her story is very interesting because being a mom and being strong, she immediately at the luncheon we had after the funeral, which we'll get to, shout out to my uncle that paid for everything at this awesome country club. There was 300 people there. Beautiful. That's how you want to send someone off. And at that lunch, my mom came up to me and told me the inception of this foundation. That's how quick.
Sorry, you say this foundation. Tell me what you mean.
Yeah, the annual LeGere's Foundation. I would rather wait and get to that at the end.
All right. So okay, got it.
But I guess I should tell it now because of the sake of her story. So the annual LeGere's Foundation is something we set up because we realized, I was telling you guys earlier, or you, there's no one else here.
No, nobody else is here.
And
I'm alone.
So what I was telling you earlier is that, there's these little things you think of where it's what if the police officer had an EpiPen? And that's literally
And I'm not trying to be an asshole. Can you just explain what epinephrine is? Or EpiPen is, please.
So if you have an allergy, God, I pray that you already have one. And now, good news. So 2020, one of the legislation rules in Illinois is that every single insurer, no matter what insurance you could have the worst insurance on the planet, they have to cover the cost of epinephrine. That was not a rule until 2020, which is fucked up. So you'd have to go. I'll tell you. So you have to go to so EpiPens are retailed at $500 a piece if you don't have insurance.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah, for kids.
500 for children?
For kids. And they recently made it so that you have to have it. But so, I guess whatever shitty company makes these things, whatever shitty company charges that much for this life-saving drug, their logic there is that there's like, you can go get kind of like off-brand, just like needles at CVS.
Wait a minute. Hold on. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Does that mean buy a needle?
No. So like, but the whole reason people, like especially a child doesn't want to stick a needle in their arm. That's why they made this device, because it's this nice device. It's a pen. And so you put it on your leg and you press down and then it sticks you with a needle, but you don't see a needle go into your skin. It's a very clean process.
Yeah.
And it's super simple. You press, if you're having an allergic reaction, you press it, you count to 10 and you're good. So there are like, cheap kind of, like the term EpiPen is a trademarked thing. Like EpiPens aren't a thing
Kleenex.
that people have.
Like
Yeah.
Or Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
And so, these things have been, and we didn't know any of this. And then we found out how crazy this whole scenario is in terms of like the medical field and how expensive these are and all this stuff. And so the entire mission of this, of the foundation we started was to just simply make epinephrine more readily available. So number one was getting legislation passed in Illinois, because it's actually against the law for a first responder to carry it.
Why is it against
Because
the law?
you have to have training and funding to buy them, and then training to administer them. So this is another thing where it's like, technically, if you're a police officer and something like my sister happens where they have an unknown allergy, and so you don't know outright that this person's having an allergic reaction, I think depending on, what state they're in, what medication state, mental state or physical, like not like the state, like Illinois. Yeah. Depending on what state they're in, what medications they're on, what their health is like, if you shoot someone with epinephrine, they could possibly die. Again, I don't know that for a fact, but I think that was like the reasoning as to why it wasn't so readily available, is like the potential health risk of giving it to someone who doesn't need it. Because we also found out that people use these things like for fun, kind of like we found out somehow people were like shooting themselves with EpiPens because it's like adrenaline for like sports, like before a sports game.
Oh, really?
I mean, that could have totally been like a word of mouth rumor, but it's something that I heard. But anyways, the whole point of this foundation was to do just that, is to, and we went down to Springfield and we created the LeGere's law in Illinois, that allows first responders to carry epinephrine. So as long as your city or your community has, the funding to buy EpiPens and train your police department, your firefighters, etc., on how to use them, you can carry them, and everyone has them. And now, between that and the law in Illinois about making sure they're insured, we feel pretty good about it. But it's not just that; it's getting them on school buses, in schools, where these kind of things happen. And it again goes back to like just the human body and how crazy it is. Like, kids are going through changes, and this is when people develop allergies at like our age.
Let's not say our. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
Yours,
I'm kidding.
you old man.
At my age, yeah. That's weird. I read about that in AARP magazine. Yeah.
And So it's just, it's trying to deal with the unknown in a sense that we try to regulate or mitigate as many instances as this happens. And actually, I can't remember when the date was. It was a couple of years later. Someone in Elmhurst had an allergic reaction without their EpiPen, was on the ground with anaphylaxis, and a police officer came and gave them EpiPen last year.
Like 2019.
And they reached out to my mom and they were like, you single-handedly saved my life.
Wow. So, forgive me.
She's
if
gone
I'm wrong.
to Washington and
Your mother has.
Yeah.
Is
I forget our representative out there. Or you know what? I don't even know if it was Elmhurst's congressperson. It might have been a different district, but
she got somebody to be like, well,
yeah, someone on the federal level.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is, it's such a strange situation that you can't expect anyone to really care or this isn't on the top of anyone's mind. It's such a strange outlierish thing. Comedians make jokes about it. My favorite comedians make jokes about allergies.
Yeah.
And I don't
Lorre or
Ricky Gervais.
Kidding. Ricky Gervais. Yeah.
I went and saw one of my favorites, Joey Diaz, in Austin a couple of years ago. And he wasn't making a joke about someone having an allergic reaction and dying from it or anything like that. He was basically saying what's true, which is the way we've gone about, this is another kind of medical thing, is the way we've gone about treating allergies is another kind of phenomenon, meaning that when you and I grew up and our parents grew up, if they found out you had an allergy, they exposed you to it slowly.
Right. They put the fucking needles in your back.
Yeah, and then but they would say every day, so if you're allergic to peanuts, right, eat a half peanut, then eat a whole peanut, then you eat 2 peanuts, and eventually the theory was, and I mean...
It's like vaccines. It's like your body creates antibodies or whatever.
And so I somewhere along the line, people decided that was wrong, and then the story was no, you're not supposed to expose them. You're not supposed to expose your kid at all to something they're allergic to, and that's what it's been like for my sister's generation.
Right.
And I don't know, what the current trends are, and if they're going to go back to the old way or what's going on there. And I'm not a doctor, so I don't. I just play one. In a Beatles song.
Oh, Dr. Robert. Yeah. Track 11 on Revolver.
Very good.
Yeah. I mean, come on. I've seen a fucking Beatles cover band called Dr. Robert in Carbondale on September 14th, 2001. Don't even give me that fucking look, Brent. Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no. So, and that's this is why I wanted to save the foundation thing for the end, because the topic is still, in case anyone's forgotten, my mother. And so this is really tied up in the way she coped with things. So she, of course, started going to therapy and dealing with things in, I think, a very mature way. And obviously, it's I can't even, I'm not going to pretend like I understand. I'm not going to pretend like I can imagine what she was going through at that time. And she was extremely wrapped up in this foundation thing. And we had, annual walks, like a 5K. We had a 5K run walk for my sister in Elmhurst every year. And it was a run walk because she did not like to run.
I love that.
She'd be cheating out of the school mile and shit.
Yeah, right. She'd be like, fuck this.
No, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So
funny.
if you wanted to walk, and it was great. We had a lot of fun. And it was a good, the problem that this whole, the foundation thing kind of tapered off, number one, because, to be quite honest, it wasn't helping my mom. So she was burying herself in this as an effort to...
Was it exhausting? I imagine that was exhausting.
Of course, it's exhausting and it was taking up a lot of her time. But on top of that, it's a beautiful idea to try to keep your daughter alive. But how can you move on if every single day you're working on something for Annie you can't, and that's the thing is, ever since she's kind of taken a step back and she still does things for this foundation and she still speaks at schools and different organizations and things like that, still to this day, she did it like last month. But when it was an everyday thing and it was consuming her efforts outside of maybe her job, and she knew it, like she knew, because I would tell her, I'm like, Mom, this isn't like healthy for you. Like, I know that you, like, it's not, you think you're doing the right thing. You are doing the right thing.
Yeah. How long into it did you say that to her? Was it right away? Was
no,
it after
I mean,
year or two, or
probably 2 years, I would say, is when she kind of started to ease out of that.
But how long
that's
were
when she
you
truly
saying to her that it wasn't healthy for her?
Like 2 years.
Okay, got it.
Because at first I was like, this is great. Like you don't actually start to see the effects for a year or two of something like that, because you're like, oh, like, and that's the crazy thing is like something you think that you're doing good is actually not helping your mental health heal. And I think that she truly, the last 2 years has been her period of like really, really healing and starting to feel okay.
And I feel like such a piece of shit for asking this, but does that mean letting go? Because the way that you said it a moment ago, like, how are you ever going to move on from this if that's your whole life? Yeah,
well, that's the thing. The terms like letting go and moving on, those aren't things that are really true or that happen.
Okay.
But if your intent is to keep this at top of mind, that's not healthy. Even if like, even if the purpose is good, if this is all you're thinking about all the time, it's not good. And that's what I keep reverting back to our phone call yesterday. Like everyone that's listening was in on the call.
Actually, they were, because just my mother and Taylor. That's it.
Yeah,
that's who's listening. So, yeah.
But yeah, like, and to give my credit, like, if my parents were not as strong of people as they are, like, I wouldn't be okay.
Yeah. So, if I may ask you, let me just say this. I've been listening to this amazing story, and I listened to it last night as we talked, and I listened to it over text. Excuse me. In December, and of course, I've tried to put myself in that position. And what would I do if I lost my sister? And I just don't know how to fathom it, right? And so what I'm trying to say is, you've gone through all of this. Your family has gone through all this. Your family is a close-knit unit, whether it be your immediate family or your family around. People were flying in, as you said. Your mother is a respected member, obviously, of the community. They shut down the hospital, the surgery part of the hospital for a while for your sister's memorial. I still can't get my head around it, and that's fine. But what I want to ask you is, how old were you? 22?
Yeah.
So you're 22, and I don't know about you, but when I was 22, I made only right decisions. So how did you deal with it?
I just studied really hard and, worked out all the time. No, I did quite the opposite of that. So that gets, to my kind of journey in terms of coping. And, my parents are my parents. And I think inherently, if they see me struggling, or if they see, like, if I was to get fired from my job or anything negative that happens in my life, they immediately are like, that's on us. Like, we're your parents. We're here for you.
You mentioned that earlier about your dad.
Yeah. And I think, even for him to hear that I was going to come, like, share my story on a podcast like this and talk about, the dark side of, like, what I went through, he couldn't help but be like, I was there for you, right? And I was like, yeah, of course you were, Dad. But, like, none of us, like, when you're in that moment, like, we of course were there for each other, meaning like I'm putting little bunny ear parentheses, like we were there for each other, but like we're all going through this thing that no one, I don't care if it's your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister, like no one can be there for you inside your spirit and your mind other than yourself. And until you fix that, and you can only fix that on your own, there's nothing anyone can do for you. And so like, I'm not going to get into details, but there was definitely like, you know, like drinking and drug abuse. And my favorite drug is food. That's a joke I've always said. And like, I remember I put on like 80 pounds in like probably 18 months and then lost 80 pounds.
Wait, okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
Would you just eat to be like that?
Made me feel
comfort?
good. Okay. So it was really, it was a situation where like, and again, that's what I was kind of alluding to, where like, it's no one's fault. No one wasn't there for me, but I kind of took on this role of being like, you know, the rock, right? So I was there for my parents because like they were going through their shit. And I think that they were, because they probably weren't like numbing themselves in the way that I was, they were much more emotional about it. So I kind of felt like it was my place to be the non-emotional person and to be like, everything's fine, everything's good, like we're going to make it through this, et cetera, et cetera.
Do you think you were aware of that at the time that you were
absolutely
doing that? You were.
I was.
You're
100%.
Like, I have to be this.
I have to be this guy because I have like, you have like your grandparents, you have like old men like leaning on you. That's a crazy thing. Aunts, uncles, everyone. And my immediate response, and it wasn't healthy. And, you know, let me just say that it doesn't have to be something like this. If you're going through something in life and your response to that is to try to numb yourself with chemicals or, you know, like junk food or anything like that, like it's all about the intent in which you choose to alter your mind. If you're altering your mind, if you're going to a concert and you take acid, I think that can be a very positive experience. If you're doing drugs, like if you're doing a substance because it's there and because you think it's going to help you forget something, that is completely irresponsible, unsafe, unhealthy, and that's what gets you to a point of like a very bad place. And it can just be booze. There's no like hierarchy of like this drug's worse than this drug, but I mean,
right.
Like if you're consuming a substance or you're doing something that's unhealthy to you, and it could be bulimia, it could be, you know, like self-harm. It can be any kind of unhealthy habit that you're doing, and if the intent of why you're doing it is because you're struggling, you need to stop, because that pain is going to be there when you wake up, if you wake up, because it gets to that point. People die all the time, and people aren't, you know, homeless doing drugs on the street because they're chasing a fun high. They're there because of something that's happened, and their response was drugs and alcohol.
Exactly. And by exactly, I mean, I think that's exactly right. And I think that's extremely well said. And I know that you went through the trouble that you went through, obviously, and you dealt with it how you dealt with it, and your parents dealt with it, and you were extremely, extremely brave to come here and talk to me about it. And I just wish you and your family only the best. Only the best. And I think it's amazing that your family's put together this foundation. Tell me the name of the foundation again.
Annie LeGere Foundation.
Annie LeGere Foundation. Okay. And is there any place that people can go to support it or anything like that, or no? Yeah. AnnieLeGereFoundation.org. Or it might just be ALF.org. Okay. We'll put that in the show notes. For anybody who's still listening, so Taylor
your mom
or my mom.
Yeah.
Hey mom, I'm real sorry about everything.
And I just want to, so that was a very, I feel like kind of dark and negative moment in this. And like, this isn't some situation where like I became like a junkie or anything like that. It was simply just it was a coping mechanism that I'm proud to say that I'm over.
Right.
And I turned this into things like I said. I like gained a bunch of weight. I lost a bunch of weight. So I run now. That's kind of I created healthy habits for myself. I have a tattoo that reminds me of my sister. I'll show you when we're done here. Like that's my meditation. So I told you I got into kind of like Buddhism a little bit. So like my meditation is running with music. That's like really the only state of mind that I feel like I can be clear-headed in. So I try to do that every day. That's like a very healthy addiction I have. And this also isn't a story of like how I got sober either, because I'm not sober now. I still drink and do things, but I do it in a positive way, which is what I was alluding to. It's
not that escape that you're
talking about. It's the tool. It's like alcohol, and I think we can talk about marijuana now that it's 2020, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Don't tell my dad.
Yeah. But like, those kind of things are completely healthy. I don't see any problem, like assuming that you don't have a dependency issue. Like there's nothing wrong with, after a long week going out with your friends and blowing off some steam and going to the bar or something like that. Or, coming home and smoking a joint or something like that to unwind. Like that's a healthy way that you're using a tool to alter your mind. An unhealthy way is saying, I'm going to do this for as long, like I'm going to do this until I pass out because it helps me forget something that I don't want to deal with.
Or it helps me sleep.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's well said. So, and I know people, and I know myself. I remember telling a mentor of mine in 2004, and he's like, "Why do you drink so much?" I said, "No, don't worry about it. It just helps me sleep."
Yeah.
And he goes, "Well, that might be an issue." And I was like, it's fine. Speaking of, thank you. Okay. Bob.
Yeah.
What a great story. And by great, I mean humane, amazing story that you've told.
Yeah. Taking a negative and turning it into a positive. That's like that's the whole thing. And I guess I want to just say, if there's, the millions of people this is going to reach, and we're going to touch so many lives. No, but if one person hears this that's going through something like this, reach out to Kevin, reach out to the podcast. He has all my information. Happy to start a dialogue with you. And that's the whole reason we're here. And like I said, it doesn't have to be something specific or close to what I went through, because there's been people in my town that lose their siblings, like since I've lost mine, that I reach out to. And it's very touching when they're like, 100 people have texted me about this. You're the one I'm responding to because you get it. And I know that when you sent me that text, that it was like from your heart.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's all I can hope for. And if anyone, I would love to, that's another thing too, is like, I was talking to my parents about this, like, there's no like AA meeting for this kind of shit.
And I'm not trying to be a shithead. Is there no like grief groups?
I mean, of course there are. There's groups for people who lose a loved one, but like, that's the thing, is everyone's story is so different, and every story makes you feel differently and you heal differently from it. And like, to lose your loved one, that's why I was talking about the joke thing, is because you can't expect a normal person to actually sympathize with a situation like this. Like, it's so niche and it's so strange and it's peculiar.
It's what everybody's afraid of, right? And it's what everybody, if they haven't gone through it, I think it's enlightening. That's a weird way to say it, but it's something that they understand. It's a good thing to understand. And if they have gone through it, as you said, 100 people text them, and from you, they're like, "Oh, I'm going to respond to you because you get it."
Yeah.
Right? And obviously, you get it. I like to spend a lot of my time thinking about all the battles I've gone through, and none of them are compared to this, right? I just would not know what to do. God forbid. And I don't even believe in fucking God, but God forbid this were to happen. I wouldn't know what to do. So, Bob, I appreciate you coming on the show.
Of course, man.
And sharing your story and sharing your family's story.
Yeah. It's crazy too, because when you live, like when you're from a place like I'm from, and this is something that I wanted to touch on earlier, and I'm sorry that you're trying to wrap this up and I keep dragging it on.
Shut up. No, keep going. Come on.
Yeah. No, so, another thing too, when you grow up in like suburbia, right? I fucking hate my hometown. Like I hate those conservative parents that were like calling the cops on me for being at the park past dark and stuff.
Oh no!
And then you grow up.
I didn't do that.
You grow up. Well, I mean,
was with you for a minute.
I'm like trying to make this G-rated, if you will.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
gotcha.
yeah.
Okay.
But you kind of resent it in your early teen years, and then like when I was 22. And I watched the way that my community rallied around my family. Like, that is some special shit. And I just want to thank the people that did that, because these were the same people that I was probably cursing at and kicking rocks at when I was like a little punk. And you don't appreciate it when you're that young.
True, but going back to what you said much earlier about being 15, being at fucking Disney World, being like, where's the teen nightclub, which I thought was great. And then realizing it's not about myself, right? And so it's another version of like, oh, okay, I was that version of myself, and now here I am dealing with this, and look at my wonderful community.
Yeah. No, and I mean, like, to see where we are now, like me and my parents, it's because we could have very easily just been another number where like something happens like this to a family and the family just like crumbles.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not that at all. Like we host holidays, and you know, I was making a joke to my buddy. I was like, I think my parents like worst coping mechanism right now is like the amount of presents they get me for Christmas, because like they were supposed to be doing that with my sister for the next however many years, and so like, if they want to spoil their grown child, thank you, Mom and Dad. I love the juicer.
I was gonna say, are they just?
They got me a really nice juicer.
And just like, how many Mastodon records can you get?
Yeah.
Somebody?
Well, no, my mom got me. I had to send back some gifts. I was like, I don't need another pair of UGG slippers. Like, so, but like I said, if that's the worst thing that is happening right now in terms of like, you know, what a psychologist might say is like not healthy.
Mm-hmm. That sounds pretty fucking healthy.
Yeah, that's the best you can hope for, and like to see where we're at, I'm just so proud of my parents, and I'm so happy for them. And yeah, I'm happy for myself. Like a big thing too was ShipBob, because
this is the company where you work.
Yes, this is a company where I met my friend Kevin.
What an asshole.
Yeah, he's a douche.
Yeah. Cleaning.
But yeah, like that opened up my network to so many people. It's nice to meet people that don't know me as that. Because where I come from, like a lot of the people in my circle, like obviously like everyone in my circle, but like everyone in my network knows who I am. They know my last name. They know that story. And there's this weird, you know what I mean? And I think that moving outside of that, because before I was working at ShipBob, I was doing part-time work like at an accounting office, and I was like working at Jimmy John's, which I was working at a very successful Jimmy John's. So I would go there and like deliver sandwiches for 3 hours and make like $100 cash. So it was like a good little side hustle while I was like figuring out what I was going to do. But then I went and worked for my uncle's company, which is like in that circle. So
Ship Larry.
Yeah. Where like, you know, you go out in town, and that's your, excuse me. that's the deal. And then at work, it's more and more of a bubble.
Yeah.
And so like, I'm so grateful that I went to a place and made so many new friends that, I don't want to say I could be a different person to, but you know what I'm getting at, right? Like it's the whole.
Well, yeah. It's when I met you.
I'm just Bob to them.
Yeah, you're Bob, and you just you're the guy who likes music, and then we talk about this other stuff, and then oh my goodness, and then let me tell you about my life, So and you're wrong about Bob Dylan live, but that's okay. It's okay. I threw that out there for your dad, unless he's with you.
No, when I told him you saw him, he was like, "Oh man, did he get his money back?"
That's
so you and him can debate that.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah. That's fair. This is probably the best show I've seen. I've seen him 10 times. I mean, it's not Fish. Was it 27 times you've seen them?
Yeah.
So you're a pup.
Something
you're
like
a
that.
Fish pup.
Yeah, those are rookie numbers. I got to get those up.
Alliteration for those of you who don't know who Fish is.
They're just the best
of the two of us. My mom.
They're not even just the greatest. They're the greatest art project that's ever existed. Sorry, we just lost your mom.
Yeah, she's gone.
And
she's like, turn this shit off. No, we lost her the moment I said anything upsetting about Donald Trump. So on that, I think we'll wrap up. But no bullshit aside, all the joking aside, thank you so much for coming on and telling your story and sharing it. I think it's brave, and I think your family's amazing, and I love from yesterday and today hearing about how your family bonded together. I think it's one of the most amazing things. And when I was a kid, I used to be about even family, and I was wrong. And thank you for sharing that. And thank you everybody out there for listening. And remember, next time you're gonna light up a cigarette, light up a fuck.
Fuck cigarettes.
Fuck cigarettes. You know what I mean? You know
Yeah.
what I'm talking about. Thanks everybody for tuning in to Sad Times. Of course, thank you, Bob, again.
Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah, thank you. And we'll see you guys on the other side. Bye.
You've been listening to a Fourth Hand Joint.